Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Conversation Hub. We're delighted to be here to look at unlocking growth, why every leader needs a coach. This week, in place of the lovely Volker, I'm delighted that Mike has joined us for this conversation. Mike, welcome.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for the invitation. Looking forward to our chat. And for obviously all you people that don't know me, my background is as an HR executive. I've worked in various quite big tech companies across the world. I've got about 40 years experience, which is an awfully long time in that field. And the last 8-9 years, I've been focusing on the executive coaching, which is what I do now, and it's a particular interest of mine. I would say passion, but that's a slightly overused word. But I am very interested in it. I think there's a massive value.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward. We have many conversations and a great deal of enjoyment, humour, education between us. And where I'd really like to start in our conversation was to think about this in terms of senior people and how do they get the opportunity to explore their own thinking, because I think that's critical to growth. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, it's well, I think that is really critical for the individual. Whether it's a CEO or a C-suite person or a high potential or anybody on a leadership team, and critical for them in terms of their development, their impact, and their ability to get things done to the best effect. But of course, it's critical for the companies, because the better the players in the company are, the better the company is going to perform. So it's so many people don't take the opportunity, but having not taken the opportunity myself always in the past, which is a regret, I'm a strong advocate. And rather than beating people around the head and saying you must do it, I'm hoping that you and I talking about the benefits that can be accrued might help people understand what they can get from it.
You made a very good point about not taking up the opportunity always. And I've really found that a bit of a struggle, that you look at people who need coaching. I recently completed a coaching gig, as we call them. It lasted about 18 months. And the coachee really appreciated what we did. He was a CEO. He's been a very senior person for a long time, and I was amazed at that resistance. That sort of I don't want to do it yet. I don't want to. It reminded me of the classic CFO says, "Why are we spending all this money training people when they can leave the company?" Followed by the CEO turning around and saying, "Well, what happens if we don't spend money training them when they stay?" And right. It was really embedded, and that sort of whole and I never, even with him, and I've known him a long time, I couldn't get to, why do you feel like that? Have you ever got an answer to that question?
No, I mean, I've had that reaction on numerous occasions. Have I got an answer to it? Not really, because end of the day, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And I really do think the only way to shift people's opinion in that space is either to be able to demonstrate how they can navigate themselves differently, or have them chat with people perhaps, or become aware of what other people in their space have achieved differently and better by using executive coaching. And I think, it's that kind of thing, because often people in leadership positions are quite stressed because it's busy, it's hard, it's really fast paced, and there's not an awful lot of time to think about stuff. If people were able to step back and take a bit of thinking time, and they think, do you know what, I really would benefit, for example, from a executive coach, but there's so much on the treadmill, they don't see it. And dare I say, at the risk of knocking the kind of people I'd like to work with, there can be quite a strong sense of ego for people operating at that level, especially when they've progressed through a difficult environment. So they're going to think, well, I'm pretty good. Why do I need personal help to go and do something? And the answer is my bias, everybody will get benefit from talking to somebody they trust who is knowledgeable in the process of helping people unlock their blockers. You don't have to be knowledgeable in the business space. I mean, a lot of people advocate, you need to understand tech businesses, or you need to understand agricultural businesses, or whatever. There's arguments pro and con, but frankly, you don't. You get somebody who knows what they're doing as a coach, and can develop the rapport and the connection, and thereby the trust. It's a really powerful gateway for people to really energize themselves and get more out of themselves.
You bundled up some really great things in that sort of input there. So I've made a few notes, and we'll try and unbundle them for people who are going to be listening. The first is you sort of referred to trust and being trustworthy, and we talk about that a lot when we go into clients or in clients already, and we're talking about transformation or coaching senior teams, or even coaching any team. And one of the things I found that answered the question for me was about why they do or do not take coaching was referral is really important. And it doesn't have to be referral as in, someone goes along and says, oh, have you used Mike Adell, or have you used CultureWorks, or whatever. It's that sort of ability to say, okay, well, I understand where you're coming from in terms of you're a bit reticent. I mean, one of the people said, oh, I don't like spending money on myself when things are difficult, or I don't. They're all sort of, if you like, fake barriers to actually investing. I mean, I'm talking about someone who was earning $1 million a year, talking about worrying about spending money. It was a bit of a moment for me. But I think that sort of referral conversation where someone can talk to one of your previous coachees, or a current coachee indeed, I think that's a very useful way of helping people to unblock the growth potential of coaching.
I think it really is. I mean, you or I, if we were talking to somebody who's thinking about taking us on or someone on as a coach, I could use example. I mean, I could think of at least, which I'm not going to share publicly, at least 3 examples of things I didn't do desperately well in my executive career, where I would have really, really, really benefited from having a coach who I'm certain would have helped me to adapt what I was doing to a better way of getting what I was trying to achieve. And I really regret either not having had the opportunity or not ever created that opportunity, because things could be quite different now. And it's absolutely key. And I've worked with so many people in big businesses, as in kind of FTSE 100 and 250s, and latterly in small and medium-sized business. And it's quite astonishing. And again, it's going to sound a bit big-headed, but just seeing the blocks that people are not recognizing that they've got, and not recognizing that they could actually probably take those blockers away from them, and thereby be so much better at what they're trying to do.
And a wonderful comment that takes me back to that bit of advice that someone asked me that question was, what is the advice you'd give a 25, 21-year-old Michael? And now you're 50. Well, I'm a little bit past that now, unfortunately, as well. But just a bit, no telling tales, Mike.
It's really kind of you. I'll take it. Thank you.
No, I meant me, not you. But...
Right, okay.
Or both of us. But the point was, they said, what advice would you give to your younger self? And I absolutely agree with what you've just said. It encapsulated it perfectly. The advice was, for goodness sake, relax. Let stuff come to you a bit. Take some time. And I think coaching allows people to take time. It's a period in their diary where they are focused on them. Now, that might be the problems to do with the business. It might be personal problems that they have. It might be any myriad of things. But what they've done is just take the time to relax and reflect, and sort of really think through what it is that is troubling them about. I had a conversation last night about someone who coaching, who said, I feel I've lost my mojo. And it was really interesting just to let him reflect on that and why he's got there, and just we took an hour and a half, had a couple of beers, and it was just good time for him to self-reflect. And that self-reflection is a brilliant part of coaching. You mentioned something else, and you talked about stress, and you talk about stressful. I wondered whether you wanted to pick up on that, or whether you wanted to pick up on the other thing you touched on, which was a coach isn't just one flavor. It isn't just a hammer and a nail. A coach needs to have a bag of tools if they're really going to unlock growth.
Yeah, well, I can happily talk about both, but let me take the second one first, because there's that bag of tool things it's a really, really great point in terms of the coach. I was a firm believer, having been quite a senior player in, as I said before, in the fact that I was a pretty good coach, and I thought, I'm not going to bother doing one of these expensive qualifications because I really know what I'm doing. And to a point, that was true. However, having a few years ago decided I wanted to certify as a coach, I then realised, as I went through that diploma pathway, all the things that I didn't know. And not all of it is going to be useful all of the time, but it could be. And me having an awareness and an ability to use quite a diverse set of coaching tools versus my core mode is basically experienced bloke, empathetic, rational, gentle questions, helping explore, drill down. So that was my modus operandi. Now I've got many other ways of basically helping. So if people hit a blocker, they're not going to get the mono mic, because there comes a point it just doesn't work, because if they're not getting a breakthrough, they're not getting a breakthrough. So now that I've got a significantly larger toolkit, most of which I can actually use, it's great, and it has transformed the way I've been able to coach my clients, because there's different routes. And then subsequent to that, I've also very recently completed a coaching supervision diploma, which was brilliant. And coaching supervision, no one's going to know what that is unless you're a coach, and it's basically somebody who's it's almost like a coach's coach, which is really useful for people in the coaching space. But that has made me, I think, an even better coach than I was, because I've seen a whole series of different angles. So that toolkit piece is absolutely critical. So for anybody, any business person choosing their business coach, I would say the two things that to really major on is how does the coach go about doing his or her business? And you don't need to have an Ashridge or a Henley or anything like that kind of diploma, because basically it's the same as everything else, that they just charge more for it. Yeah, but somebody who really knows their stuff in terms of the various routes to helping people achieve what they want to achieve, and then that piece of empathy. And you and I are both skilled in our space. We're both fairly likable fellas. We're both fairly easy to get on with. Yeah, but you're going to work better with some people, and I'm going to work better with others, and only that person will know. So that that's really, really critical. But the tool bag and the coach's ability and willingness and interest in using that is paramount.
That whole point of having a tool bag and not going in mono mic, to use your phrase, I actually posted something on LinkedIn from a guy called Bill Critchley, and you just mentioned Ashridge, and of course you'll know who Bill is. And he wrote a great article on the EMCC website, which, as you say, we've both now done the coaching supervision diploma, which I'm delighted to talk about. And we're qualified coaches and all this. But he pointed out in this article that life isn't just about, can you do one type of coaching? He pointed out that sometimes people want you to give them, not direct them in terms of you need to do it like this or need to do it like that, but to take some well-chosen epitaphs or take some well-chosen little stories and just throw those in for consideration. So it enables a coachee to consider what it is that they might want to think about. It's not about replacing their thought process. It is about adding fuel to their thought, my phrase, not his, adding fuel to their thinking process. And I think that was a very insightful piece that he wrote in terms of, if you want growth and you want things, and if you're trying to grow, you need to change things up, you need to change things around. And that use of that phrase you had earlier of mono, you're going to have to change the way you do things. And we know, because we're both also GC indexologists, people who use the GC index in our everyday work in transformation and organizational development, that people want to have different impacts. They have different passions, a word you used right at the beginning. They have different abilities to deliver that. And I think that coaches, quite often you'll do work with a coach for 6 months, maybe 12 months, maybe 2 years, sometimes longer. But never forget that change, I'm not going to use that hackneyed phrase, but change is actually a very useful way of thinking about how you want to be coached and whether you're getting enough out of the coaching. So yeah, I posted that on my LinkedIn post this morning. So if people want to go and look at it, then please go ahead.
Now that you've mentioned it, I'm going to look it up myself. That sounds interesting.
I tagged you, so you'll be pleased to know, because I knew we were doing this. I tagged you. So
right.
Yeah, but it's a great article. One of the other things we sort of touched on earlier, and you and I have talked about in the past, and it's the area that's less bravado, is this what we call creating thinking time. How does coaching, and a lot of people sort of back off that bit and say, oh, hang on a minute, I'm a go-getter, I need to go do this. And actually, when you say to people, do you block time in your diary? Do you put time where you're just doing the impact stuff, thinking through yourself what it is that you're trying to achieve and how are you trying to achieve it? I find remarkable that I was taught this quite young. I was mentored into it. I find it remarkable, how many people don't take any time. I remember coaching one person and she said, well, I go from meeting to meeting to meeting. I said, well, what, 10 minutes in? No, I have no, I start at 8:30 and I finish at 4:30 and I've done 7 1-hour meetings. I went, how do you do your job? I just asked it as a hanging question, not I was much more, how do you get your job done if you're always in meetings? And that was an interesting moment. Do you ever come across time blocking? Do you use it? Do you think about it? Is it something that people shy away from? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of encountering people that are so busy they haven't got time to do anything else because they're doing something useful, like being in a meeting where you're not actually doing anything. A lot. And it is interesting if I'm encountering someone like that, and then you get, they kind of self-realize, if I'm going to 7 or 8 meetings a day, actually, what am I doing? Because you're not. I mean, the meetings are one of the most biggest wastes of time. The only thing that's a bigger waste of time than a meeting is going to a convention or something. That's my bias against that kind of thing. Sorry. It's so that is where it is really useful in that kind of in a coach person relationship, where them talking about it is them hitting the self-realization. And often I've found people don't need me to offer them a thought about it. They come to that realization themselves that actually that isn't as smart. I feel busy. I feel valued because I'm being busy, but I'm not achieving. Whether it's recharging the brain, because that's quite an important thing. Am I taking people that scoot through without eating? Well, that's fine. We can all do it when we need to, but doing it all the time, that's pretty dumb, because we need the fuel to make ourselves better. People often get tense, and you can just see them. They start getting tighter in the chest because they're not breathing fully. The time when you're under stress is really, really important to make sure you breathe. So that thing where you say, just sit back, where you can sit back, put your hands on your table, and just breathe deep into the gut. Because what you're doing is you're then giving valuable oxygen fuel to your brain, and you're going to think so much more clearly, and you're going to come out with much better reactions in the stress moment. And you have to learn those things pre-being in the stress moment, because when you're in it, you're just reacting. And that's the kind of thing that that's only a tiny thread of the coach-client relationship, but just recognizing that and thinking, do you know what? Let myself get stressed without actively managing it isn't very helpful to what I'm trying to do. And then helping them to work out what their best routes are to de-stress or avoid getting into it, or when it's happening, decompress for the best performance.
That word you used, I really like it, the decompression. Do you, as a leader in a business, do you decompress at any point? Because if you don't, those around you see that, and those around you pick
things that and the way I'd phrase that would be, when are you able to decompress? And then that just sets them thinking off about, well, no, I don't.
Yeah.
Or what's decompress?
Yes. Yeah, so sometimes the language is really important. I think you said to me earlier that about when you talk about time in your diary or time blocking, whatever phrase you want to use, sometimes it doesn't land with a coachee, and you need to use a form of language. And I think the decompression language is a fantastic way of entering into a meaningful conversation. As you just said, I use a technique. I do this.
Right.
I just sit in front of the client if they're not talking, and I know something's on their mind, and I just do this. Client knows I'm not going to say anything, even if I don't tell them that's what it indicates. I just sit there and wait. And that's only failed once in my life. Right. And when we talked about getting into difficult conversations, and it happened, would you believe, in the chemistry test. And we were asking about, and I sat there and I did this, and they said nothing. And I thought, I don't think I can help or coach you. It's not, that's not going to be me. And I think that's the other thing that sometimes is overlooked when you're looking to grow a business or change it round or get leaders into a different place, is that have you got the right chemistry between those people who are being coached and the pool of coaches, but also how are they observing that from a team coaching perspective? How are they observing that throughout the team, throughout the group? What are the levels of introversion, extroversion? What are the levels of interaction and commitment and input versus the level of just listening? And when do people get a chance to put all? And I think coaching can really help bring out significant improvements in performance, because they are able to put those things up, if you like, up on the picture wall and say, are you aware these things are happening in the group? It's not a negative. It's not a positive. It's just these are behaviors that are happening. How do you as a group cope with group behaviors? Do you all cope in the same way? I somewhat doubt it.
And what you do this in a group coaching context?
Yeah, you can do it. I think you can do it both. First of all, you do it individually, but also in the group coaching session when you look at how people are behaving with each other.
So the example quoted is actually you doing one-on-one coaching, but having taken the examples from observing the group, so you're able to feed it into your client. Got it.
Yeah. We also do, that's one way. The other way, we do also do it in group coaching sessions. So I remember we were out in Greece for a session where we had quite a large group of senior managers, and we did something called the Round the World Cafe as an exercise. And what I don't know, are you familiar with that? Have you ever done that?
No.
Right. Okay. Well, very quickly, you get people to write their ideas and thoughts about certain topics onto a big canvas on a table, the cafe table, and then people move around the room and add further thoughts, and watching people's behavior as a group and then reflecting that behavior back to the group was not everything. You have to be a seasoned coach to understand what would be useful and what wouldn't. But that was a fascinating insight into how this group were behaviorally dysfunctional, without going into psychology, which is, I'm not a qualified psychologist, but it was still from just a human observational behavioral perspective. It was fascinating, and that was all part of the coaching. It was all part of the toolkit and all part of the observational improvement that we made for the business.
Yeah. Can I just, you talked about the toolkit again, and I just thought of one that is really different to most people in business, which is one that I've learned through my diplomas. And it's basically helping or enabling the client to talk about what he or she is feeling in the given moment. So, often they'll be talking about a situation or something that's causing them some difficulty and how they overcome it. And my original style would have been just to talk about that and try and nail the problem as they find it. Actually, what I've discovered is so powerful, getting them as they're talking about it, asking them how they feel as they're saying the words, and then perhaps enacting a conversation between themselves and the other person that they're having a problem with. So it's a two-way thing. But as they then start to express their feelings in that specific moment, as they're talking to me, as they're saying the words, and then re-experiencing whatever the emotions were at the time, that can be astonishingly powerful in terms of their self-realization about what they might need to do differently if they want to, or what it is that might be bugging them. And in their rational brains, it's the thing right in front of them. Actually, it's often something quite different. So it's that venturing into that kind of feeling space and providing the opportunity for them to talk about that is crucial. Which, of course, is the thing that you and I haven't touched on yet is the let's call it the safe space. So a client, senior person, got an ego. Give me a senior person that has fought their way to where they are, who hasn't got some form of ego, and I'll be astonished. All right. And they're for the most part, even inside of a trusting set of relationships, will be thinking, someone here is trying to eat me. Yeah, it could be more than one, could be many. And who are they going to really, really trust with their deepest kind of feelings inside of perhaps their own team or their own organization? And the answer is not a lot, really. Whereas talking to someone like you and I as an executive coach, where everything is in that box and it just doesn't leave the them and us piece, is critical. So they can then freely express how they're feeling about stuff without, whilst knowing it is not in any way damaging them versus how people look at them or tainting other people's relationships. with them. I mean, in fact, we were remiss in not having mentioned that so far, because that is a really, really potent component to any coach-client relationship.
Well, it's a good point, because you brought us to the end of our 30 minutes with that lovely insight that you've just given us. It just leaves me the opportunity to say thank you to everybody else who will listen to either the whole chat, or will conversation up, or may even listen to the little bits that we put out. But thank you for joining us. Mike, any final word?
Well, thanks for inviting me. That was surprisingly enjoyable.
We do our best. Okay, sir, until next time, I look forward to seeing you all again. Cheers now. Bye-bye.